Remember when I said I don't trust mechanical workshops? Well, there's always an exception. Lehman Mechanical is a family-run business that's been looking after my cars and trucks for years. Whenever I can't do it myself or I'm in over my head, this is the man I rely on to do it right the first time. Dave will be taking us through an annual service on my 1997 Toyota Hiace four-wheel drive. And he starts by ordering the parts he knows he's going to need, in this case, an oil filter. Then it's off on a test drive so that Dave can get a feel for the car for anything abnormal which he might need to pay special attention to later on. Upon returning, the lights are checked, as is the horn, the wipers, the windscreen washers, and the seat belts. Upon checking the lights, we noticed that one of the number plate or license plate lights was only working intermittently. So Dave decided to clean the contacts and replace it with a brand new bulb, and that fixed the issue.
Just be careful when fitting these that the seal sits back in there correctly. Otherwise you'll get water and moisture
It's got a gasket on it, does it?
It has got a rubber gasket on it.
Yeah.
But I always give these lenses a bit of a clean because they're filled with dirt and dust. But a lot of it is making sure that the gasket seals properly, so no moisture can get in there. Beautiful.
Next, the car is lifted on the hoist and Dave begins removing the protective underbody panels for better visibility and access.
There you go, there's some money.
Where? Oh, Japanese money. We know we're going to change the engine oil, so Dave starts by draining the engine oil before starting his inspection from the back of the car, working his way to the front. It does not look like a car that's 24 years old.
No.
Under here. Nice and dirty.
Yeah, diesel engines.
Yeah.
Always.
So this has only done about 5,000 kilometers on this oil, but because I don't know what kind of oil is in here, I'm replacing it a little bit earlier. I should mention, as the title states, this is a basic annual service. Next year, the car will receive its first timing belt and heavy maintenance check under my ownership.
Check for your brake. You can check in the little holes here. They'll give you a indication of how many brakes you've got left on it.
Yep, on the shoes.
On the shoes, on the rear drums.
So there's just like a little bung in there.
Well, yeah. So there's a little service bung. A little service bung. So they basically cut the backing plate out. Yep. Right where the drum and the shoe sits. Mm-hmm. So you can actually see in there, and you can see how much meat's left on the shoes themselves. Cool. I would say that them rear brakes still got about 70% left.
Yeah, because you just said them a little while ago.
There's lots of shoes left. This is what they call a load sensitive valve. Yep. So when you've got, say you've got a full van of passengers, yep, what it will do will change the brake bias so that the rears, it senses that you've got more people on board.
And it'll put more brakes on the back.
So what it does essentially is when you load up the van, it's attached to your
physically drops down.
diff. So that physically drops down, which will let go of that spring, which opens the proportioning valve. Yep. And that proportioning valve obviously gives you more brakes in the back because you've got weight sitting on the back.
And when it's empty, it won't lock up the back.
Yeah, so when it's empty, it puts your brake bias back to standard. So you've got, say, 70% front, 30% rear. So it's more of a load-sensitive valve. You'll find these a lot on utes and bits and pieces. Anything that's going to carry weight.
Cool.
A lot of the bushes with, so for example, you've got the bush hole there. Try and concentrate on the bolt, and you want to make sure that the bolt is actually in the center of the hole. If the bush is flogged in any way, that arm would sit higher than the bolt, so the bolt's essentially sitting in the bottom of the hole.
Okay, I got
so they'll give you a big indication of how your bushes are. If it's bolt sitting central, usually your bushes are in good condition. But you know, you can understand if you wear out that that bit of rubber there,
it's going to drop.
This is going to drop, and it's not going to sit center in the hole anymore.
Ah, didn't know that.
All your little drag links and bits and pieces, they're all in fairly good nick. They've got no play in any of them. This is more of like a stabilizer sway bar. They can really make a big racket if any of these bushes are worn. Go and check the diff level. Diff level purely if it's up to the hole, that's cool.
Perfect.
So you'll find your diff.
Well, you'd be in trouble if that wasn't full because you did it last.
Yeah. So you find your diff level is usually at the bottom of the hole. As oil heats up, it expands and that's why it's dribbling out a little bit.
If you notice throughout the video, Dave is constantly looking over components, even double and triple checking parts, as well as wiping everything clean. In fact, I probably edited out 20 minutes of Dave just wiping the underbody of my car. Thanks, mate.
Just trying to find the diff breather. They should run a little breather on top of the diff. Here it is up here. I always grab hold of that fella. I'll get a torch. And there's your diff breather there. Always grab hold of it and give it a bit of a flick and twist to make sure it's free and not blocked of dirt. Okay, You want the diff to breathe. This is the transfer case for your four-wheel drive. That's your drain hole. This is your fill hole. So the transmission on these things are two different identities. So they have their own oil, one for the transfer case and one for the automatic transmission. That's fine, it's got plenty of oil in it, clean.
Cool.
And remember this is an aluminium housing, so don't do them up too tight. Steel bolt with an aluminium housing, you'll strip that bolt as quick as look at it. By loosening this screw here, that nut, you can tighten your handbrake enough to give yourself a better handbrake position. We'll check that once we get it back down on the ground. Another handbrake adjuster there.
Oh, there's two.
All about shortening the cable.
Yeah, so there's heaps of adjustment left on that one as well.
Yeah. The main thing is to adjust them at your wheels first and then work your way forward to get your adjustment.
Dave checks for any rattles, anything coming loose, leaks, cracks, or any damage throughout the entire underbody. Thankfully, there's none. I've previously worked in workshops and been around mechanics my whole life, and I have to say, after spending the day with Dave, I have never seen anyone take as much care and as much pride in doing a vehicle inspection. And that's because a lot of Dave's customers use their cars in extremely harsh environments, and he might not see that car for an entire year. So he wants to make sure that any vehicle that leaves his workshop is safe and reliable.
This is your rear heater here. This is a little heater tap. So you've got a cable there that operates your heater tap open and close for your rear heater. So you'll have one hose coming in and one hose returning back to the engine. Obviously this heater tap here is what interrupts the flow to the rear heater. So you always really want to do the pinch test on them. You don't want them to be crunchy or yucky.
Full of rust.
Yeah, so good coolant and combat a lot of that.
Which you've done already on this.
But yeah, all the hoses feel quite good, but you're looking for any signs of coolant leaks coming out of any of these.
Dave removed the air filter housing. This filter isn't completely clogged, but it does need replacing. We ran out of time for a replacement, so Dave cleaned it up using compressed air. I'll throw a new one in pretty soon.
Clean up the air housing.
Yeah, just get rid of any loose debris. Make sure that your little one-way valve here that operates to let go of any of the moisture.
Okay, yep.
Sometimes the plastic or the rubber sticks and welds itself to it. So any water that's going to sit in the bottom here won't be able to escape through little holes.
Yep.
So it's just to make sure that they're free.
Working.
These ones here, front. So arrow pointing towards the front of the vehicle, make sure that that's in the right location.
Next, Dave checked the front diff oil, and he moves on to the front end with both the radiators, the oil cooler, the air conditioning system, and the suspension.
Unfortunately, this one you can't get the socket on it, you can only get a spanner.
What size is
24mm across the board, which is 15, 16. They're a metric vehicle, so you use 24mm. Spotless.
cool.
So you've still got plenty of front brakes. I'd say you've still got over 70% left on the front brakes. There's lots of pad from what I can see through here. They're very hard to see, but yeah. After seeing that many of them, you know what you're looking for. Here's your ABS module just here.
Okay.
You can see all the brake lines coming into the back of it. So that's the ABS.
They've really packaged it all over the place, haven't they?
Oh yeah.
Wherever they could.
Wherever they can find a spot. Front CV shafts, so that's your front wheel
Could
drive.
they make some noise every now and then?
They will make a clicking noise
Like
if
a
they're
click,
warm.
Yeah, and every now and then, if I'm on full lock and reversing, I'll hear the sharp split, like crack, and then it won't make a noise ever again.
Yeah, they will make a bit of a noise because you really just got a constant velocity joint.
Yeah.
So that clunking noise that you spoke about before,
Yeah.
when you're on full lock, that will be your bump stops here. So if you come around the front, you'll see them better. So these are your steering locks.
Yep.
See how that's really shiny on top of the pin?
Yeah.
And that's really shiny in there.
Yeah.
So on full lock, that will meet,
Oh,
That
so
there-
that's what I'm hearing.
that there meets that. But on full lock, if that stopper is sitting there and you go over a bump, that will ride up that and it will give it awful
That makes a lot of sense. now.
noise sounds like death.
Yeah.
I know that these things here, you can get replacement caps for them,
Yeah.
so that they're not just a metal on metal.
Oh, okay. Like
com-
nylon caps or something.
Yeah, so they're a nylon push-on cap.
Yeah.
I find through just using grease, you can quieten that noise down.
Yeah.
Just putting a nice, genuine blob of grease in the track that it operates in. So that track there. So that will lubricate when it's on its bump stop. And that will stop that noise. But everything looks pretty good there. There's engine mounts are in good condition. No cracks or any signs of movement. Engine is quite dry, no signs of any leaks. Pretty well looked after.
I should mention, as the title states, this is a basic annual service. Next year, the car will receive its first timing belt and heavy maintenance check under my ownership.
I don't need a lot of grease, that's enough to push the old grease out. Gotta get that grease gun in there. Go nice around the tunnel. Be very careful doing that too, because there's something sharp hanging out of the tyre. Destroy your hands.
So that's the oil filter.
Oil filter coming off. Yep. Oil filter, always make sure that the ring, your gasket on the oil filter always comes off with the oil filter. You can see that one moving there.
Yep.
Sometimes they get stuck to the housing.
So that's where the oil filter goes. Brand new filter, just like a Land Cruiser.
New one, always.
They're a pretty decent sized filter, aren't they?
Oh yeah, for the size of the engine. Very good in comparison to some engines out there. So you should be able to just get away with doing these up hand tight.
Just hand tight.
So that the next person to service it doesn't have to
Fight with it.
because they do tend to get tighter as the service life goes on.
Yep.
It's quite good coolant. Let's make sure that the fan is all good. There's no movement up and down on the water pump. Some of these little idler bearings probably next time might need addressing. So when we do the belt,
Yep.
we may, once we pull the belts off, we'll give these little idler bearings a spin.
Yep.
They are quite easy to change the bearing in them rather than having to change the whole pulley.
Yep.
For a $3, $4 bearing, they're quite
Worthwhile, yeah.
worthwhile to change.
Especially if you're doing it once every 100,000, just change it.
Yes. Yeah. So we should be at the stage of putting some engine oil in it now.
Yep.
We've got
Everything
the oil
looks good.
filter on. We've got some. Everything's spotless. No signs of any dramas there whatsoever. So unfortunately, on your first startup, this oil's going to go from this colour to black quite quickly.
Yeah.
So I try to fill it so it's just over the full line on the dipstick.
Yeah.
Because
then
when
the
you
filter.
start it, the oil filter will take quite a bit of that oil. it's just over the full mark now. So even though we've got the air cleaner out of it, we can still start the vehicle until the oil light goes out, and then shut it down again to recheck our oil level.
Nice and black already.
All black already and spot on full.
Awesome.
Dave checked the coolant, which was recently replaced, and verified the correct antifreeze to water ratio. He also checked the brake fluid using a digital gauge and cleaned out the brake fluid strainer and the cap. The engine belts, fan, hoses, and the general engine bay was checked for anything out of the ordinary, as well as the injection system for any leaks. Dave noted that the ATF was darker than usual, but not burnt. This falls in line with the ECU temp sensor issue I had, preventing the torque converter from locking up. While that was happening, the new fluid was working harder than ever at highway speeds. So this fluid should be fine until the next service, which is the big timing belt maintenance call, and the ATF will be flushed out then.
So through having the aircon on recirc, so essentially it's pulling the air back into the air conditioning system underneath the glove box. By spraying a surface spray disinfectant, it will get sucked into the air conditioning system and de-germ, sanitize all the nasties inside the aircon unit. It should be done on a regular basis, just to keep all your colds, flus and bad bacteria out of your aircon system.
Especially with COVID.
And it also gives the car a nice smell.
Yeah.
Quite smart, ingenious design, how they've got their own funnel on their window
That's for
washer.
the windscreen washer, is it?
And it wheeze on you at the end. I just got a lube to go around all the doors and the slides. Just takes away the doors grinding and croning. All right, test drive. Final test drive. Come back, make sure there's no new leaks or any problems. That's a service. Handbrake feels a lot better now that it's all adjusted correctly. So test drive will determine that the handbrake's correct, not over tight. Handbrake's done over tight, you'll feel it dragging and possibly making a noise. So we'll start off in low gear, I'll just manually shift through the gears to make sure that they're all working correctly. So on a test drive from service, you do a bit of a side-to-side wander to inspect any noises in the wheel bearings or each individual wheel. You'll pick up sounds of anything that's not right. A lot of that comes down to obviously a trained ear. So we'll pull up onto a nice clean bit of concrete so we can have a quick look underneath to make sure that we've got no leaks. And that will be service completed.
If you're a good owner, you know just how important it is to keep your car's history. Not only does it add value as proof of caring, but it starts to add to the story of the car. Speaking of stories, this is the end of this one. Thanks for sticking around, and thanks to Lehman Mechanical for helping me and helping you by letting us film. If you're into obsessive maintenance and detailing, or JDM cars in general, consider subscribing. Each new subscriber motivates me to do better in every new video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.